Well, welcome back to my one-car garage where I'm building my wings. I know a lot of you probably are thinking that you clicked on the wrong episode. Rest assured, this is episode 15. Pulled the wings off my airplane last night, brought them home so I can get the fuel tanks installed, systems installation like the pitot tube, magnetometer, braces in the end. I'm going to varnish the wings starting in about 2 days. I got to leave town for a couple of days and come back, and then I'm going to hit the varnish pretty hard. And the idea being that I'll be covering these wings here in the next couple weeks for sure. Just last night I pulled these wings off the airplane to help my son, loaded them on a U-Haul trailer like I did to get them there, and brought them home. Got them on the rotisseries, and after my son left, I promptly pulled that end of this right wing off the rotisserie, and it fell, landed on the antlers of the other end, but I did damage one piece of trailing edge strip, so pretty brutal. So the things I managed to do correctly this week, jury struts are installed. They came out perfect. Fuel tanks are flushed, and they came out great, leak checked. Not too worried about those. I have the adhesive for that. I mounted my header tank in the fuselage. I measured up all the fuel system to see what kind of fuel line I would need. Yes, of course, the kit comes with fuel line and hose clamps and barb fittings and all that. At the suggestion of somebody on the forum, I obtained these are 1/4 inch NPT to AN6. So I'm going to go with AN6 hose and hardware from the tanks all the way to the engine. And looking forward to doing that. These are actually pretty cool banjo fittings. Has a socket for an Allen wrench, so that you can just put it in there. You don't have to worry about spinning this around and having to cut a notch in the ribs or access plate in your covering or anything like that. Pretty cool. What were these, about 18 bucks a piece, I think. And other things would be my butt ribs are fitted. Jury struts are done. A lot of things off my, well, a handful of things off of my whiteboard list. And then it was time to get a lot done, so I brought them home. By the way, I gave up on my basic pitot tube probe that I had mentioned before. I got the Gap 26 Garmin 2-port probe that'll allow me to use my AOA in my MGL avionics. That's probably about it. Let's get some building done. I guess first off, got an order from Kitfox and some miscellaneous vendors. So I got, probably start with this. Whereas last week I was talking about my basic pitot tube. I got the Garmin Gap 26. This is an unheated dual vent probe so that I can hook up my AOA system. And I got the platform that goes with that and the mast. This is the entire installation kit, so it comes with 30 feet of 1/4 inch OD tube, which I think is not enough because most people, let's see, where's that going? Rib number 7. So it's going to go here, and they think that you should guide the tube outboard and then route it through the rear spar, and then from there to your instrumentation. Now, some people put junctions at the root of the wing so they can take the wing off, and I've read a lot of convincing arguments that say you should not bother with that because it's just going to be a source of problems, and how many times you're going to take the wing off. If they need to at some point, they can cut the hose, put a connector. I'm kind of in that group now also. So anyway, 30 feet would be enough to make a single run of that, but it would not be enough for both the AOA and the pitot probe. What else? So I got these, it's kind of corny. These are switch guards that are replicas of what are used on the space shuttle. I got this idea from Nate down at the other end of the airport. They're kind of cool. They're what, $5 and change on eBay, so you heard it here. I've got the adhesive to bond the tanks into position. This was the other set of parts that I got, was the prefabbed brackets, both the ones for down here, and I'll say Kitfox actually replaced these front brackets because, like I pointed out in a video I made earlier, I have 4 brackets that are the same. When I placed my order with Heather, she just sent me these, but I ordered new ones for the rear, and the reason is because I've read several people's build threads and they have difficulty with those clamps even being long enough to wrap around and get a bolt through. And I can tell you that these new ones fit way better than the ones I have already in stock. So if you're sitting on an old set of brackets that was fabricated back when they first started doing aero lift struts, chuck them, order some new ones. This one went together pretty easily, just squeezed it, got the bolt through there. The one in the back, it looked like it wasn't going to line up, so I used a set of, I have a set of long nose vice grips that I have marked, padded up with tape. I squeezed the ears together up high on the ears, and then I took a zip tie and I wrapped it around down low, cinched that tight, took the vice grips off, and that enabled me to slip the jury strut in, get a bolt right through it, super easy. I took a picture, I'll put that over the top here. So I've been working on prepping my tanks, and I'm pretty sure there has been no one building one of these airplanes that said, I'm looking forward to this part where you get to slosh the tanks out with acetone. As I mentioned before, Brian Bowen's videos have great content. I refer back to them. It's been a while actually since I looked at some of them, but I remembered he had some on putting in the tanks and also the Laker leading edge, so I went back and reviewed those recently. And he made a comment about how the tape he was using, there was no kind of tape that wouldn't just come off as soon as it meets acetone. So I thought, if I used the strapping tape that it calls for in the manual and did an extra careful job of really rubbing it down, that would stay on. Well, it didn't. There's pieces of strapping tape all over the place that came off my other tank. However, so I thought about this drawer of rubber plugs that I have in my stuff, and I wondered if they'd work. Well, guess what? They work awesome. So I guess they're meant for masking off while you're doing powder coating. I just found ones that were appropriately sized. And this actually may or may not be the source of these. Powder Pro Coating Supply, powderproshop.com. It just mentions the plugs in here, and it happened to be in this drawer, so that may be where they came from. For the gas cap hole, which tape didn't work on at all, I have actually an extra set of fuel caps, and these are kind of weird because they don't fit on the airplane straight. They fit with the vent tube pointed at a weird angle, so where I originally thought I had two sets of caps and was happy about that, I have one set that's completely junk, so I'm just using that here. And the plugs are even small enough that I have one that'll fit in the vent, and this sealed this up completely. In fact, it burps. See what I mean? That's just kind of weird. So this worked so well that it was building pressure inside the tank when I just sloshed this one out. So I've gone from pretty darn dirty to progressively better. I'm gonna filter this stuff out and use it for the initial rinse of this tank right here, and then I'll get back to straight up clean resin, straight up clean acetone towards the end. Anyway, I just thought I'd share this tip because tape doesn't work, but these rubber plugs absolutely do, so get some of those. This morning I was convinced I was coming out here to pull these wings off, take them home, varnish the wood so I can work on dropping the tanks in, and then I remembered jury struts. So this absolutely, these have to be in place, riveted and bonded before I can take the wings off. And this, because these tabs have to be sticking through the fabric. So obviously I got my prefabricated fittings from Kitfox. These are them. I'm out of hardware here at the hangar without stealing something off of something else. So I'll get some washers, nuts, and clamp these down, go back through the process of making sure everything's perfect, and then I will drill through those number 30 holes into the spar and bond those, at which point then my wings will come off. So tomorrow afternoon, these wings are going to be home on the rotisseries in my garage. And I have to say, as much as I love hanging out at the airport as many hours as I can, it's way more productive at home where your tools are and where you can walk outside and work for 15 minutes and then do something else you're required to do for life, and then work on the airplane a little bit more. Sometimes it's just not that productive out here, but for this process with the wings on, stuff like jury struts, I don't have a choice. All right, it is Sunday and I'm back out here. Of course, this takes a little bit longer than I anticipated because anytime I'm drilling holes in the spars, just trying to back up, triple check, and I'm glad I did so. So today I came out here, I decided to make 3 more of these redneck plumb bobs and then recreate what it was my son found here yesterday when he was looking at this, and he determined that this jury strut actually has a little bit of a twist to it. So that was the challenge I was able to absolutely verify today. I don't know if you'll be able to see this, pretty cluttery background here, but if you line up the 2 plumb bobs, of course there's a little bit of breeze right now, but it enables you to line the 2 of them up, and then you can see that the jury strut next to it is also vertical. This one looks a little twisted again because of the breeze, This one's settled down a little bit more because the wind is not here so much, but it was actually quite clear before I clamped this front fitting in place that the bottom of the jury strut was fine, the rear part was perfectly upright and parallel to the string, but the forward section that's nearest to us has a twist and it moved off that way. So I kind of have it restrained right now. And then I have gone through and used my clamps to hold the rear part of the tab in place, and now I'm going to drill and cleco the forward fitting, and then drill the rear, cleco the whole thing. At that point I'll be committed, and then I'm going to figure out a creative way to mark the exact location of these clamps around the lift struts so that these are repeatable. Once that's done and these are clecoed, I've already deburred the fittings, but I'm gonna grind to fresh metal on the inside, Scotch-Brite, of course, the spar, acetone everything, high sol with micro balloons, the rivets, and at that point jury struts are loaded and correct. Actually, I'm pretty happy with that. One of the things I think I caught on video, but I screwed it up, was that before these fittings showed up, I was hoping that they did not have the holes in them. And the reason I'm glad that the holes are not in here is because if you did go through the trouble of getting these jury struts completely square to the airplane, square to each other, and clamped in the position down here, then there's no room for adjustment if those these prefab brackets had the holes in it already. So they did not. They were over length. These forward ones I ground down maybe 3/8 of an inch to get the flat part of the tab to line up with the flat squeezed part of the jury strut. In the rear I trimmed off maybe just 1/8 of an inch and then deburred that. So at this point I've cut out excuses. Time to set the camera down and grab the drill. Here's those jury strut fittings. They're drilled, clecoed, all the places. You can see this was my 54-inch from the inboard end of the aft spar, transferred forward. So you can see I'm just inside there, also just inside there in the back. And here on the left where I was concerned, this is this still has the twist in it, so I'm going to relieve that once I pull this fitting off, and it's all real square. It's actually shockingly secure. The whole thing is solid, so pretty cool. Anyway, so now I'm gonna pop these fittings off, deburr the holes in the spar, and then prep for high sol micro balloons and rivets. Got all that on hand today, and obviously I've got all my hardware at home, so it's a good day. So once this is bonded, and it gives me an hour or so, I can pop these wings off, take them home. Well, I'm back on the wings today. I was hoping to get some varnishing done, but the first thing I wanted to do is replace this piece of trailing edge. You can see the damage that was done to it, and this is after straightening it out. And the trick I used for getting this off was using the property of aluminum, which makes it difficult to weld on, and that is that when you put heat to it, it dissipates the heat very quickly. So my goal, and I wasn't sure if it was going to work or not, was to heat up this piece and not this one, so that I wouldn't have to rebond this side also. And so I took my heat gun and I applied heat out here, you know, about 3 inches. This one I wasn't worried about. And then on this end, in about 3 inches. And I kept checking with my hand, and this side was just warm. And then I just kept checking it by prying up underneath the edge with a screwdriver, actually. And it popped right off, and it just left the adhesive on there. And so then I used a Dremel tool, and I removed the adhesive in all the locations, and then I fit up this new piece, and it's fits perfectly. So the challenge with pop rivets, they're normally real easy to drill out. You just use a drill, which is basically just a tiny bit bigger than the through hole, and you start drilling on the head of it. It's got a self-centering feature, and then the head spins loose, and normally you just poke out the rest of it. Well, in this case, there's epoxy on these rivets, so they stayed in there. So what I did, there used to be a hole here, so I just moved it to the other side, so it's in fresh material, and then the same thing happened on the opposite side there. Anyway, these are super smooth. This one I had to notch just a tiny bit. This material is from a different batch that was made a different year, but now it's Aladyne, it's ready to go. So I was just ready to put a tip on the mixing gun and bond this in place, and then turn my attention to varnishing when I remembered what I talked about the other day, which was with the false ribs in place on the bottom, it's going to limit the ability to get in here and do a good job of varnishing this. So I think what I'm going to do is fit the top 3 that were over the top of the lift strut attach fittings, varnish everything, then come back and install the lower false ribs, and then varnish those separately. Let's see what else I got going. So fuel tanks. Earlier I made some disparaging comments about a couple of my caps, gas caps, as being junk because the vent tubes didn't line up. People on the forum came to the rescue. All you have to do is grab this upper part and bend it, twist it as perfectly as you can until it lines up. It's a very common issue apparently, and it's also easily resolved. I would have never tried that before because I would have thought this vent would have just cracked out, but I did it on both caps, worked great, so now I do have 4 caps. And the reason for a pair of 36-inch scales right here is this non-uniform gap which everybody gets to experience. So what I'm going to do is take the scale and clamp it so that it's an exact uniform distance from this edge of the rib. And then I'm going to take these tanks back outside and sand them to the line that I make so that they can butt up smoothly. And that's going to move the tank outboard just a little bit. And after that is when I'm going to fit my finger screens and those banjo fittings and see what I need to do to make clearance for them. Well, the high sol's curing on the 3 upper false ribs that go over the lift strut attach fitting on both wings. I've checked it a couple times, make sure nothing has moved on me. And I also bonded and riveted the replacement piece of trailing edge. And at this point, I think I've got plenty for an episode, and I've probably used enough of your time. Looks like episode 16 is going to have the varnishing and systems installation and preparation for covering. So tune in for that. Again, thanks for watching.